think we're ready to start. Can everybody hear us up here? Is this mic working okay? First of all, thank you very much, all of you, for coming here. We're talking about an issue that to some may seem minuscule, but to Williamson, Bell, and Travis County, it can mean the difference between good, sound, clean growth and basically the shutting down of three of the most dynamic counties in the United States. So when we're dealing with our Endangered Species Act, we also are dealing with the other species that has to dwell with that endangered species, that is the human species, and how they can interact and we can continue to preserve those threatened animals or insects that might be looked at, and yet continue to have the kind of growth that we're very proud that we have here in the Central Texas area. I think most of you probably know this, but one of the things that has been interesting to me since I've been in Congress for the last 10 years is every year my home county, Williamson, has been one of the top 10 and on occasion the #1 growth county in the United States. So we are an example of what growth is around the entire country. We also, most of us know, that as compared to some of our neighbors in other states, we are very blessed to live in Central Texas, where smart decisions and good planning have made us still able to have jobs and be able to grow our communities in a sane and proper way. Today we're here to address the three species of salamander. These are tiny little things, and we have one here. If you haven't seen one, we've caught one. Just to start off by telling you that this habitat, which sits right underneath this giant piece of construction, is according to the good doctor who studies these things, is overflowing with these. Both the adult and the babies are thriving just below us right here in that small, tiny little creek, which, it's my understanding, is there's a spring there, and that spring and other springs upstream feed what we all know as Lake Creek over in the Round Rock area. So this is all connected to our watershed. The issue here is the EPA is at least looking at whether or not they are going to list these salamanders, and if they list these salamanders as endangered species or threatened species, then we're looking at the federal government coming in and imposing some fairly strict uses upon the land in Williamson, Bell, and Travis County. I think many of you that have been around Central Texas for a long time know that the Barton Creek salamander shut down the entire western side of Travis County, and to some extent still has shut down. So we're trying to, I've been working on this quietly behind the scenes for about a year. My Texas Chief of Staff and I have flown to New Mexico and met with Fish and Wildlife. And let me say, we met with them, we talked, we calmed our feathers and their feathers, and we realized that we can work together. And I'm hoping that we'll have the same kind of cooperation on this issue that we have just heard about that happened out in West Texas concerning the dunes sand lizard, where they chose not to list that species because the local communities were making every effort to preserve the species, and they felt comfortable that they could trust the local folks. And I think that's exactly where we are. We have got I speak for Williamson County now, but they have hired a study. Others are participating in this study. Others are hiring additional people to make studies so that we can find out exactly what our situation is with these three species. And so, because we feel like that with the preservation set-asides that the counties involved have done for species, that we are showing good stewardship of these animals, and that we can continue to have good stewardship without the imposition of federal mandates upon our area. And that's really what this is all about, and that's what we're here for. We got some people that we're really proud that are here. Jesus Chavez, the superintendent of schools, is here, and you got schools all around us.
Right over here.
Right over there. There you go. See, and it affects. When this happens, it will affect everybody. And so, Larry Gonzalez, our state representative, is here. And he's going to speak a little bit. Tony Dale, the mayor pro tem over at Cedar Park, is here. We've got our commissioners, 3 of our commissioners here: Berkman, Covey, and Long. I believe we have representatives of the Round Rock Chambers, maybe other chambers of commerce are here. We have some, John Lewis is here to represent an organization of landowners. There's also investing time and money into research on these issues. And so we're going to let each one of some of these folks speak on what they see as the issue. We are here to show that our communities can preserve these species without the imposition of the federal government. The less we have the federal government around here, the better off we are, and I speak from experience. Okay, so let's ask now Representative Larry Gonzalez to come up and say a few words. Larry?
Good morning. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate it very much. There's no doubt that Texas is the economic envy of the nation. And where we live, Williamson County is by far the shining star of Texas. But it's by no coincidence that all this has happened. For generations here in Williamson County, people have made good, smart, and careful decisions. We've grown and developed our county very wisely. We've created this education and economic infrastructure of success. We have a diversified tax base. It's a great mixture of residential, commercial, retail. We have universities, we have hospitals, we have great secondary schools, and your choices for higher education vary from an associate's degree to career and technical to a medical degree at Texas A&M University. Nobody can argue with our success. There is a synergy at work between our economic development, education, jobs, prosperity, and lower tax rates. But today, our future ability to manage our county is at risk. Our ability to develop our educational and economic infrastructure is at risk. Our ability to make decisions we know are best for Williamson County are at risk. And our ability to manage our economic development is at risk. Williamson County is very good at what we do, and we have been for a very long time, because we've entrusted very important decisions to men and women who understand what's best for this county. And we've done well. Look all around us. What a phenomenal place we live. But it's not by coincidence, it's by plan. Careful planning, buy-in from the community, the greater good comes to surface here, and everybody knows that Williamson County is a fantastic place to live. I stand here with the judge and elected officials in complete support of our efforts. Thank you guys very much.
Let's get Commissioner Berkman to come up and say a few words. I think we're in her precinct.
Yes, welcome to Williamson County Precinct 1. Before I say anything, I also wanted to recognize a few other people that are here. I know we have Mayor Pro Tem of Round Rock, Chris Whitfield, as well as the Mayor of Cedar Park, Matt Powell, are here, and then a representative from Dr. Charles Schwartner's office and a representative from Senator Hutchison's office are here as well. So thank you very much, everyone, for being here. I am the president of the Williamson County Conservation Foundation. It was founded in December of 2002 for just this kind of problem and others. The whole point of the Conservation Foundation is to work on endangered species in Williamson County and promote responsible development at the same time. In April of 2007, the county, along with the foundation, got a permit from the federal government for a regional habitat conservation plan. We did that after years, and I mean years, of public input in what's best for Williamson County. And like Judge Carter was saying, we did that because we wanted to do what we thought was the best solution here locally. And we still believe that that is the best solution, to have local answers to these kind of problems. And And so we did this also because, like he mentioned, the rapid growth in the county. We had to look forward into what would be a responsible way to grow. The RHCP calls for funding for the salamander studies, and we are in our second year of that 5-year funding. And one thing that we would like the federal government to recognize is that we have spent a considerable amount of funds to study the salamander. We have some preliminary results, and we'd like to be able to finish that before any further federal action is taken. Commissioner Covey is Vice President of the Foundation, and she is the head of the Salamander Task Force, and she's going to give you a few more details about some of the work that the county and the Foundation have been doing. Commissioner Covey.
Hello. Can you hear me okay? I'm glad you're here today, and thank you all those behind me here. This is an interesting day that we're here to talk about a salamander. I also want to thank Congressman Carter for his leadership on this matter and for the opportunity to address this issue today. We've had multiple occasions to partner with the Congressman to resolve issues on other creatures that are already on the endangered list here in Williamson County. And we know firsthand the potential impact that a listing decision would have on our economy and with the landowners' rights to use their land. As Commissioner Berkman stated, the Williamson County Conservation Foundation has taken a proactive approach in dealing with endangered species. This provides more certainty for the development community, be it private developers, landowners, cities, the county, the state, and even school districts. The foundation will invest between $500,000 and $1 million to research the salamander and provide the science to determine if it should be threatened or listed as endangered or not listed at all. The service is bound by law to use the best available science in making their determination, and based on the data continuing to be provided by our biology team, the science does not support a listing. Isn't this a beautiful area that we're in today? I know it's kind of hard to hear with all the traffic above us, but we're right under a major infrastructure and close to a lot of traffic, not just here on 45, but also on 620. And as the science has shown, and maybe you've seen today, the salamander continues to exist right here, under this highway, right in that stream. There are about 93 known locations for just the Jollyville salamander alone. And over 80 of those are already in preserved areas. So you have to ask, how endangered are they? There are multiple examples of how humans living in harmony with the salamanders amidst well-developed areas in our county. Water quality testing is showing no negative impacts also. Even the presence of a golf course beside a spring area known to be habitat for the Jollyville salamander has provided evidence that growth and development doesn't mean that the salamander is threatened or endangered, and that we can coexist without harsh and devastating restrictions. We will continue to work together with the landowners, which are a vital part of our activity. Senators Cornyn and Hutchison, of course Congressman Carter, and other elected officials to resolve this issue with the service in the best possible manner for Williamson County. Thank you for being here today and showing your interest in this issue.
As I think every Texan knows, Texas is probably the private property champion of the world. We are the only state in the entire union that retained its public lands upon coming into the union, and that's because Texans believe in private property. There are landowners that are going to be affected by this issue. And John Lewis is here to speak on behalf of an association of landowners who are also willing to spend money to make sure that this issue is resolved scientifically correctly. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman, and in particular, Commissioners Covey and Berkman and all the other elected officials for helping and being concerned on this issue. I'm speaking on behalf of the Texas Salamander Coalition. group of landowners in western Williamson County. Our landowners have been protecting the water, the trees, and animals of this area for many, many years. You could say that these landowners were environmentalists on behalf of their land even before the term existed. We have, in an effort to separate fact from rumor, also hired scientists, aquatic experts, and species experts in an effort to provide good and current science to the fish and wildlife. With an honest evaluation of the science gathered by our group, as well as that of the Williamson County Conservation Foundation, we feel certain the folks with the fish and wildlife will conclude, as we have, that the species are flourishing even as our area grows. We cannot imagine how rushing to list the salamanders without carefully evaluating the most current science being presented to fish and wildlife over the next month or so is in the best interest of the country or the salamanders. Thank you.
Looking around, I also noticed we have an awful lot of representatives from the Chamber of Commerce of Georgetown. We appreciate them being here too. And John Lewis hit on the deadline that we're currently up against. They are talking about making a decision on this by September the 30th, which is just right around the corner. And for that reason, I have drafted an amendment to the Interior Bill of the United States. Here's a copy of it. Already had to correct it because scratch something out, but you're welcome to it. And I will be presenting this to the Interior Appropriations Bill, which will either come up next week or week after next in the full committee. And I serve on the Appropriations Committee. Some of you may ask why the Appropriations Bill. Well, you have to take the vehicle that's available to you as quickly as possible. And this is a vehicle which is a current event right now in Congress. We are dealing with the appropriation process. The Interior Bill will be coming up to the committee. We want to get our amendment on there so if when it goes to a conference committee, which it almost surely will between the Senate and the House, we will be part of the discussion at that conference committee. And basically what my amendment says, we would like to prevent any money being spent on the Salado, Jollyville Plateau, Georgetown, or Austin, Texas salamanders, to list them on the Endangered Species Act or as threatened species until the science is taken care of, which would be basically we would delay it until we finished our 5-year study and ask them to hold off. And it may be that this won't be necessary because our science is looking very good right now. But we're also dealing with some folks that believe we need to do a proper study, as do I, and those of us who stand behind you. Thus far, all the studies are showing us that the salamander seems to be thriving in the areas we're looking at, and in lots of areas in this county. The question is, the scientists want to do a complete study, and it's a 5-year study. We think it's reasonable to ask them to hold off until such a time as we have a real study for them to hang their hat on. It's just good common sense. Now let me tell you, you think we're in trouble financially, the greatest shortage in Washington is common sense. But we're going to try to impose a little Texas common sense upon D.C. I want to thank all of you for coming out here. Let me tell you, we passed out a little handout that gives you kind of a history of what we've been doing. You're welcome to come see the salamander. Take his picture. He's not too camera shy. We've got one that we caught amongst our scientists tell us multitude of them in this little shallow creek behind us. It's a little rough on your feet around here, but we're glad we can look at them. We really appreciate everybody turning out like this. And I think we can all see that there is a real interest in doing this and doing it right so that we can continue to be a effective growing community in Central Texas and still preserve a species that is important to our environment. With that, I'll answer any questions that you may have or address them to those others who are here.
So, Judge, basically what's driving this to start with? Whose idea was it the salamander was endangered in the first place?
There are, in fact, I have the name of the group here. I don't remember what it is. But there was a lawsuit filed by a group of environmentalists, and I've got their name here someplace. You've got it in that handout too. Yeah, Center for Biological Diversity filed a lawsuit. And the way most of these things come up is anybody with some kind of credentials as an environmentalist can basically request that a species be put on the endangered species list. At that point in time, the process begins to look and see if it's necessary. I don't know the nature of what they have to present in the way of science to back up their claim, but it's my understanding it doesn't take much to at least get the fish to start looking at it. And in talking with fish, we've got 250 some odd species that are right now being proposed by lawsuits filed by various groups around the country. Remember when we started all this, we were out to preserve the bald eagle, the American bison, the spotted owl, some of these big species, which it's been very effective. They are thriving. In fact, we've got a large bald eagle community right here in Central Texas. So it is effective, but we need to make sure that we do it in such a way that we can all coexist with the species.
Congressman, since you guys know where these locations are, why not make sure that when there's construction going on in the area, that they are following all the rules? They are putting up the buffers needed. They're putting up the...
I think we are. See, that's the argument we already can make. All this was under construction, every bit of it. They were shoving dirt right here. Look at these rocks. They didn't pop up naturally. We shoved them up down here, and yet right down here below us, there's a little hole with a spring.
But there is no one overlooking to make sure that they are doing this.
Actually, they did. They put up water barriers and others in the construction sites. We have the little short fences you see that are at all construction sites.
I see a lot of those that are down that are not maintained.
I agree. Well, we obviously did a good job on this one, because the salamanders have good water quality and they're living less than 75 feet from where you stand.
I'm just wondering, why not be more proactive?
I think we are my point is, I believe we are proactive. And nobody wants to do anything but be proactive. And in fact, that's the argument that they accepted in West Texas, that the communities had a track record of being proactive. And as they made their study in West Texas, they discovered that because of the efforts of West Texas communities, they could feel comfortable that they would be able to preserve that lizard. We feel like they could come, when this study is through, they'll see that they can feel comfortable that we will preserve this species.
And what do you do if for some reason the proactivity starts dying down and then something starts happening to the salamanders? Do you backtrack on this, or what do you do next?
Suppose these studies will be ongoing. It's kind of interesting talking to our doctor scientist. He said, we didn't even know the existence of these salamanders until just very recently, and yet we've got this major study university that's stone's throw from where we are right here that looks at this stuff all the time, and they just discovered it. I mean, quite recently that these salamanders even existed. They're very spooky critters that kind of hide out, and they're kind of hard to find. Bass fish find them real easy. There's not any bass fish in this creek down here. Anybody else?
Currently looking at the Salado salamander, a lot of parallels with Georgetown Salamanders. They exist as species only at the cellular level. In every other respect of their habitat, the way they look, how they live, underwater species are similar. But at the cellular level, they're not really. I-35 is about to expand through Salado. They broke ground last week. What impact do you see that having on the
let me start off by saying, to start off, the impact should this be listed on September 30th. From my experience before dealing with 95, which is under construction right now, they'll probably shut down construction on I-35 until this issue is addressed. That's the impact on human beings that could happen. I would be speculating slightly, but by my experience, several cave-dwelling animals, insects, certainly shut down our opportunity to go forward on 95 until just recently when we bought a bunch of caves. So that's what could happen to the project itself. And that's an example of what everybody's concerned about. I don't think anybody in their right mind would argue we don't need 35 expanded through Bell County. In fact, the county judge up there says if that's the NAFTA artery, Bell County is the blood clot in the artery. So we need to expand it. Now, what will they do? Well, I don't have any first-hand experience. There may be somebody here from the highway folks. I don't know. But I can tell you this. They obviously did something right here. And that you can't get any closer to the construction site than where we are right now. And yet, just right on that mound of rocks right there is the salamanders, and quite a few of them. And interestingly enough, not just adult salamanders, but also infant salamanders, which means they're not only thriving, but they're reproducing. And the microscopic things that they eat are all current there too. These salamanders are fairly sturdy. They're amazing. Most of us don't even know they exist. So what will happen, I assume that the highway department will be doing the same thing they did in this area, protecting the environment.
Lisa Berkman again, Williamson County Commissioner. We're building O'Connor Drive right down the street here if you go back this way, and you can see that we put in some additional water quality measures, including a trap to catch any hazardous materials. Costs more money, but that will ensure the water quality for the salamanders and all the other aquatic features that are there. So there are things that you can do, and that was done on this project, I believe, as well, even though it's a state project, so I'm not as familiar with it. But I believe that we are in the process right now of developing additional water quality measures. One reason why all the cities are here is because we're talking to them about adopting those and into their rules and regulations, going back to the question earlier. But there are things that you can do that cost a little bit more money, but to do ensure that the water quality remains as good as it is, if not better.
Thank you, Commissioner. That's a good example of what I think we've got a track record in this county of doing. And you know, the scientists also tell me that the real key is to look at the water quality and see if their food source exists, because it's even more, the food source for the salamander is more delicate than the salamander. So if those microscopic animals are surviving, then that means that somebody's done a pretty darn good job of keeping this water quality in what, if you glance down there, you would almost say is a drainage ditch. But it's obviously not. It's got spring water flowing in, and that's a blessing for all of us. I guess one more if anybody's got one.
So how many salamanders are there in there? Anybody know?
Doc? Doc, how many salamanders do you think you got? How many? They're not all. He says maybe 100 in that little hole. And that little hole is not much bigger than this podium laid down sideways. So, I mean, and there's a spring coming out from underneath that limestone ledge. And these are spring-dwelling. They like to be around springs. And there's at least some theories that in the drought, they literally crawl up the cave where the spring is to get to the water back up at the source of the spring. So it's very, very interesting animals. They survive pretty well. Well, listen, everybody, it's all about us existing with them and doing it the right way. We feel like we are going to be able to demonstrate to the federal government, to Fish and Wildlife, that we are doing the right thing here. And keep our private ownership of land without interference with the federal government. I thank you for being here. Stay with us in this fight. The more of us are in this fight together, the more we speak for all the community. And I'm very, very thankful for all this turnout. Thank you very much.